Just look at us now.
Right, folks, joining us now is, as we said earlier, the leader of the opposition, the former Prime Minister, Honourable Andrew Holness. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
And thanks for coming in. Let me start with the school year. You were the Minister of Education, and I think there's still the shadow minister.
No. I've given
that
that to Marissa Dalrymple, who is doing an excellent job. Not that I've given up education, but I think I need to focus on other things. I still pay quite a bit of attention to education.
Yeah. Before we get specific to what's happening, because a number of things have been said, what about the start of the school year? What does the ministry look at, and what is the responsibility of the ministry?
I think the first thing the ministry wants to do is to get the grants out to the schools and the various payments that have to be made. That's critically important because the ministry is relatively decentralized. The schools operate quite autonomously following the regulations set by the Ministry of Education. But if they don't have the funds, then they can't meet the regulatory standards. So getting the funds out, number one. My administration started that, giving the funds in early August, and I think the current administration has continued that. You will always have problems. We do have a cash problem. So funds may not get to the schools, on time or the amount, but I think there's been a concerted effort in especially the last 5 years to get the funds out early, and that has contributed to relatively seamless starts to the school year.
Right.
And I mean, for the last 4 years, there haven't been any issues.
To move off that just a bit, the teachers are still a little annoyed with government. They're not only this government, they were a little annoyed with your government.
Well, they were annoyed with us, but at the same time, they must admit that we give the largest pay increases to teachers ever. Whether or not it has fully realized, that's another issue. That's a function of the fiscal capacity of the government. But at the same time, I think teachers must be reasonable. We have given significant increases. But I will always say that because teachers are so important, the nation must always strive to make our teachers better off.
There are a couple of stories coming out of the opening of this school year that I think you may have issue with. One is the disabled students, what happens to them. You are also concerned about the university degrees and the CXC degrees, the CXC passes that are being sold.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about...
Well, let's start with the maintenance of school rules, particularly dress code and uniformity. Now, it is amazing. I visited a school last week, and I saw a youngster in a pair of Clarks. Now, I love Clarks. I've been wearing Clarks for more than 20 years. They're pretty expensive shoes, but I don't think they're appropriate for school. And the principal explained to me, which I didn't realize was an issue, and that they're oftentimes the source of fights. And because they're suede and they get dirty easily, and people may step on your shoes. And so school administrators have a difficulty with that. But, the wearing of tight pants to school.
Short skirts.
And short skirts.
Why don't you think Clarks? It's a black shoe.
It's suede. And
well, there are some that are leather that I think would be appropriate.
Perfectly. Those that are leather, perfect.
Why is it not appropriate?
No, I'm saying because they are suede. The principal explained it to me, and I buy the argument that you may be in class, someone steps on your suede shoes. Now, that is a higher level of offense than stepping on a leather shoe. Yeah. And it's a Clarks. Right. So, people may take offense with it. You don't want to introduce those kinds of fashion issues into the school.
Are you okay with the schools turning the students away?
No. We have been very clear as to how that should be treated. We developed a safety and security policy that explains how that should be done. When the parents send their children to school, once a child turns up at the school, they are under the care and protection of the school. If anything were to happen to them, with the parents sending them to school and the school turning them back, then there could be a legal claim on the school. So you have strategies such as detention, sequestering them, demerits.
That is also sending a message. I mean, if I turn up for work and I have
but that's different. You're an adult. It's different. Sending a child to school and then the child is turned back. If anything happens to the child,
so what they do?
No, well, for example, you have this problem. You get to school late. The normal thing is to say go back home. Now, a more appropriate thing to do is detention. It's the same effect. You have deprived the child from having the normal interaction within the school, but yet you have the child still under the care and protection of the school.
And,
I think that's
if the
important.
child comes back tomorrow and the same thing, and the parent is defiant,
well,
and the child is defiant.
No, but let's be clear. Once the school rules are established, I believe, and as minister I treated it that way, that the school rules have the effect of law. I don't believe that the school rules are any less. And once the rules are established in such a way that it is done in collaboration and cooperation with the parents, so that you discuss these things with the PTA, when a new set of parents come in, you have them sign off an agreement. I believe that the school rules should be treated as if they have the force of law. And therefore, for parents not to obey the school rules should bring some penalties. I strongly believe that. But it's not so much enforcement, but it is to get people to cooperate. As a parent, why would you want to send your child to school in breach of the school rules? It just doesn't follow. So I think remember now, the first mission of the school is education. So I think there's so much more education that needs to be done.
Back to Simone's question though.
If it's law.
Yeah, if it's law and you don't send them home the first day, you don't send them home the second day. So what do you do?
Yes, it is law, and it should be treated. In other words, the schools should maintain it and impose it as much as they can. But at the same time, the obligation of the school is education. So if the child turns up in the wrong uniform or late, then you don't want to expose yourself to any legal issues that may arise, so you find ways of exacting sanctions. And I've said the detention system works, sequestering works, a demerit system works, but in addition to all of that, you have to be counseling and educating the parents.
We have to move on to the economy, but I want to ask you before we do that, how you rate the current Minister of Education and what he's been doing?
Well, I think I give him credit for continuing the policies. Education is a very difficult subject area. He talks a very good talk, and I give him credit for that. I think talking is important in education because it sends a signal. I disagree with him on some of the things he has said because he is reversing gains that we have made, particularly in attendance, and raising and elevating the importance of education.
What do you
by,
mean
by de-emphasizing that no child should be excluded from the education service and emphasizing the payment of fees. I think in the long term, you're going to see parents changing their outlook on education. We have seen it happen already. We saw what happened in one of the social and economic surveys where parents said that the greatest obstacle to them sending their children to school is economic. And we have to always bear that in the back of our minds.
I can't remember who we were talking to. I think myself and Simone were interviewed, and they were saying that there was free education all the way up to tertiary.
Trinidad.
In Trinidad.
No, Trinidad has...
But like sixth form, we were talking about that. Sixth form, which I'm told is pre-university. It's like something like $40,000.
Yeah, so our policy on education is we have some rudimentary principles which we will enunciate at a later stage. But right now, we say that the closer you are to the labor market, the more of the burden of education you should bear. So for early childhood, primary, and 5 years of secondary, that should be free. And free doesn't mean you don't pay for anything. Free means that you should be able to access at the point you need it.
Even if you don't have the funds?
Even if you don't
Are
have
you
the
saying
funds.
the current minister is stressing fees?
I think he is.
But sir,
How
some of these kids can't
It's
afford
because it's a
to.
matter of emphasis. It's a
Some of
matter
these
of
kids
emphasis.
can't
I didn't
afford.
emphasize it, but the current minister does emphasize it. Now, there is an issue. You can't run the school without the money. But one thing escapes the discourse is that not all schools offer the same level of service. So one school may offer a service where the value of that service may be 25 or 30,000. Another school offers a service and delivers it for 5 or 10,000. The issue is that the parents don't select the schools. It is the ministry who places the students based on a choice. Now, you may very well end up sending a child to a school that they can't afford. And I've seen that happen under my watch, where a parent has, came to me crying, her daughter passed for one of the top schools, and she simply could not afford it. She came to me asking for a transfer to another school. It just broke my heart. Of course, I intervened, but you have to think how many students are in the system like that.
Yeah, we have to go for a break,
Sure.
sir. One final question before the break. Are we going to get to the stage that we will have free education, period?
I put it to you this way. I think the policy we have enunciated as it relates to from early childhood to your 18th birthday, I think we should make education accessible. It's not free. Somebody will pay for it. Somebody will pay for it afterwards. It's like the healthcare system. At the point that you need the service, you shouldn't have to worry about the fee. You should be able to access it, and then you set a payment structure afterwards that maybe intergenerationally it's paid for. So what should happen is that the government should set up a system where parents contribute throughout, which we do now have in the education tax, and I think there needs to be some serious reforms to the education tax as it relates to trying to get more money for education.
Can you stay with us, please, sir?
Sure.
All right, we're going to go for a break. We come back with the former Prime Minister in just a little while. Stay with us, please.
All right, welcome back. Still have with us Opposition Leader Honorable Andrew Holness in studio with us this morning. We're moving on to the economy, sir. IMF negotiations still going on. We hope to hear something, the Minister says, by year end. We hear there may be another recession looming, but the BOJ governor is optimistic. Your take?
Well, let's clarify some things. The IMF should be here by now, I gather.
They have a team here.
They have a team here, and they're looking at the numbers. There are some preconditions that the country must meet, and the government must demonstrate their seriousness, their credibility, by taking certain, what they call prior actions. And these prior actions are well known. There are basically 5 things that need to be done. My administration started those things. They are not without political consequence. So more than ever, Jamaica is at a place where it requires leadership. Leadership that will face the consequences, even the political consequences. What we see is a strategy of delay. And delay is no strategy. You have to act now because the pressure is building up. The uncertainty, the 2 things that markets don't like. They don't like uncertainty. And whenever there's lack of confidence, investors become risk averse.
What does the IMF want from us, and what are the political consequences?
This argument about the IMF, it's not what the IMF wants from us. And I don't like to phrase it that way. You know, the IMF is not begging Jamaica.
We are asking them.
Right?
No, but
I
I mean by what they want to see us do.
Well, I put it to you this way. It is what we said that we would do. When we engage the IMF, we go to them with a plan. And Jamaica has some serious, what I call structural weaknesses. Our tax system is distortionary. The incentives that we have in the tax system are not necessarily pro-development and growth right now, because some of them are skewed to industries that are now mature when the incentives were given to build them. So that's the taxation system. And then its taxation system is very narrow. You know, maybe close to 10,000 persons pay the bulk of taxation. You can't carry a country on that.
Is the government not stepping up their plans to get more taxes in?
No, the past administration has started that, and they have to continue it. The issue, of course, with our pension system. Now, pension is very sensitive, but it's not just Jamaica that has that problem. The United States had that problem. Chile had that problem long ago. And they have worked through it in a political way. They have engaged stakeholders. They have had the discussions. The truth is that the present system cannot sustain itself. And it is merely a self-fulfilling prophecy that one day it will collapse unless people are proactive and take the necessary steps. Now,
what is the reason for the delay?
No, but you asked the questions about what are things to do. The government maintains many loss-making entities, and the funny thing is that we maintain them on the basis that they provide employment. But really what we're doing is taking taxpayers' money to keep these entities afloat on the basis that they provide employment. But it is unfair because you're taking taxes from everybody, including the poor, to keep some persons employed. But what you really need to do is step back from the economy and look at how you can get growth and development in the economy, so that every job in the economy is meaningful and worthwhile and can carry the country by virtue of giving people income, the ability to plan and save. So I think government has to take a very proactive approach. Governments have been trapped in this thing of the politics of poverty, which says I'm doing everything for the poor. But really what happens is that they take some short-term decisions that keep the poor for the long term. Rather, Jamaica now, I believe, is at the point where we need to take some long-term decisions to break poverty by making the economy structured in such a way that businesses can operate efficiently, that investors can come. I have a very interesting concept that Honduras is doing.
Yeah.
Honduras is not the only country that has done that. That's the model for American development. If you look at what Panama is doing, if you want to talk about tax reform, look at Panama and look at how Panama has just exploded because they reformed their tax system, they brought their tax rate down to 10%. In other words, we get trapped in this concept of, well, if we do something, it's going to hurt the poor. But we don't realize that we're keeping the poor for longer. What is happening to Damon Crawford is an excellent example of the politics of poverty. And I think it is apt that the very political party that mastered it, I'm not saying they created it, that mastered it and refined it to a T, that they have to now deal with their own support base to resolve that. We are not going, we can't as a nation develop if we continue this politics of poverty.
We have to move on to some other things because we're running out of time. Crime and violence. And some
you know, we have suffered from that. And
recent to me about St. Thomas.
It's heartrending. You know, I've had so many of these experiences. I've never had the experience of trying to comfort someone whose sister was killed, an unborn child, but I've had the experience of trying to comfort people who have been killed by the state. You know, I don't. Jamaica's lost its soul.
What we're doing wrong in that area?
It's you know, I go back to education. There's so many of our persons who are not exposed to the values of progressive values of development. And then the economy is so stressful on people that aside from the, you know, losing our soul and losing our values, which the loss of civility and the attempt to resolve conflicts by violence, which is just ingrained almost, I think governments have to speak out.
What about this government and what it's doing with crime? I hear the PMPYO calling for Commissioner Ellington to go.
I'll be frank with you, I don't know what they're doing. I'll be frank with you, I don't know what they're doing with crime. I just think that the country is on autopilot in many instances. I don't think they have a clear plan. And it's amazing that the commissioner who has worked so hard was, by all accounts, been so successful that you see the undertones and the undercurrents to try and removing. I think that this government must remove the political agenda and focus on the economic agenda. They don't have a nightmare opposition. They have a progressive opposition that looks at the real problems, and we are taking the political risk. This government doesn't want to take any political risk. When I speak like this, there are my supporters there who say, no, Andrew, you need to be aggressive. But this government is not taking advantage of the space they are given to do policy. If you read the IMF report, the IMF says to the government, you have a favorable political environment. Do what you have to do. That window will close rapidly because the frustration is building out there. If you look at what is happening to investors and people who hold large portfolios have to now consider, if the government doesn't get an IMF deal, they are not able to borrow in the near future to fill deficits that will exist, because if you look at the 5-year medium-term plans, deficits will exist. How are you going to finance those deficits? The country could collapse. So investors are saying they're making a decision, in what currency do I hold my wealth?
Final question.
That's
sir.
putting strain on the foreign exchange. Mr. Vaz is getting his legal matters resolved. He has assembled a legal team, and he has been very forthright and open.
Has he resigned?
He has resigned. He has done the honorable thing without any pushing. We have discussed internally what the standards of the Labour Party should be. And if there is a breach or an apparent breach, then I think the members know that the positions that they hold that are related to the Labour Party, that they should relieve themselves of.
Can I beg 30 seconds just to ask you about the autopilot comment? I hear a lot of Jamaicans saying they're not hearing much from the Prime Minister.
I don't want to join in that discussion. The Prime Minister has her own style and her own way. My personal belief is that as a leader, you have to communicate with your people. There's no question about her capacity to communicate, which is part of the disappointment I have with this government. They have massive political capital. They are the masters of propaganda and communication. I think they should use that.
Propaganda, sir?
Yeah, and I don't take that back. I think they should use that and have a dialogue with the people.
Okay.
Because the tough decisions have to be made.
Thank you, sir. Wow. We were saying that it was a long interview, but we certainly could use even more time. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Propaganda, sir?
Andrew
Yes.
Holness. He said it twice.
Just look at us